Welcome to Truly Terrified, Paranormal versus Physics. I'm Lynn and
I'm Joe.
you are. Today we have a guest with us remotely. We're using Zoom and I hope it works. This is our second try. The first time around it did not work. Rook Stone, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Rook, and I'm an author and science communicator who lives in California. You can find me rambling about paleontology and mental health on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and my Patreon, and now this podcast.
In the spirit of full disclosure, Rook is also my adult child. So I have my two of my adult children here with me today.
Yes, I am here as a Nepo baby.
As the what baby?
A Nepo baby.
What's
Nepotism?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Thinking, what the hell? Okay, Rook, you listened to our episode on parasomnia and you felt like there were some things that you could add to that conversation. So you also said you had reached out to your Twitter community and interviewed some people. So you just start talking and we'll ask questions if we come to that.
All right. I'm going to launch into a story that I already told you when we weren't recording, and you can pretend to be amazed like you haven't heard this.
Yeah.
So many years ago, when I was in college, I was living alone at the time. The family, you guys, were mostly living in Wisconsin with Lynn, my mother, coming back and forth every 6 weeks or so. So during one of these stretches where I was alone in the house, I woke up very early morning hours, probably just after midnight, and I see a blue silvery light coming through my bedroom window. I have plastic blinds, so I can very clearly see each little shadow where the lines overlap, and I cannot move. There is a house and a fence just on the other side of this window, so it would be odd for there to be a light there.
I just want to point out that that place right outside that window is where a lady died.
Really?
Yeah, the lady next door died. Annie's mother.
Right outside my window?
Well, not right outside your window in her own yard.
Okay, so
Was that the lady died and then those two guys who cooked the meth
moved in? Yeah.
Oh my God.
Okay, yeah. So it was not, my window did not face the meth lab. It faced the house where the woman died.
Okay.
Great. So I could not move, but I could see this light. And as I'm sitting there watching this light, trying to figure out what it is and why I can't move, I start to hear little movements through the house, these little like skittering things. And I am able to move my eyes, so I look towards the open doorway to my bedroom because I'm alone in the house, so there's no reason to have the door closed. And I don't see anything. But then as I'm looking in that direction, I notice movement from the window. And in the window, there are now things moving outside. I say things because the proportions didn't look quite like people, and they were about 5 feet tall. But all I could see was the shadows through the light. So just kind of moving around out there. And the skittering sounds are continuing. It just sounds like just movement all through the house. And then what looks like to my eyes as a gray alien steps through the doorway. So again, about 5 feet tall, like the shadows outside, big, round, hairless head, big black eyes, just standing there watching me. And my bed starts to shake and I start rising up into the air. And now there is a light coming from the ceiling. And I think, is this an alien abduction? That's stupid. And that's what wakes me up. And then I'm back in my bed, no lights, no presence in the house. I think the clock at that point said around 3 a.m.
And that was back when you used to watch X-Files?
Yes, X-Files was on the air.
So the alien thing might have come from X-Files.
Yeah, I was really into science fiction, still am, and I was really into stories of alien abduction, so I had read multiple books on it, but I had also read about the theory that many alien abduction stories are actually episodes of sleep paralysis. And so that was the context within which I knew what sleep paralysis was. And so I immediately made that connection. However, most people don't actually know what sleep paralysis is before they start experiencing it. And that changes how they experience it.
How does it change it?
Well, so for a lot of people, it starts early in life. And I think I'd had some episodes of sleep paralysis as a child, but they were not as dramatic as the alien abduction dream. I would just dream that I was, something was going on and I couldn't turn my head, and I got upset that I couldn't turn my head and I couldn't speak.
Right.
And then I would eventually wake up. So nothing super dramatic. But for people with religious beliefs or, a lot of anxieties and, other parasomnias, it could be a little more dramatic. Now, for me, when I do have sleep paralysis and I have a dream, it is as real as this conversation. I can still hear the skittering sounds in the house. I can still clearly picture the way that the light streamed through the blinds in my bedroom window. My bed shaking was as visceral as, waking up from an earthquake. It was, in fact, the exact same sensation. My brain perfectly knew what that feels like when your bed is shaking and it wakes you up.
Yeah, when I've had night terrors, when I look back and remember those, it is as if it truly happened to me, and they're really bizarre. So I totally get that. It's recorded into your brain like it really truly happened.
Right. And so for people who don't know what sleep paralysis is, and there are some other people who do know what sleep paralysis is, but still view there being a spiritual element to it, and I'll get to them in a bit. But if you don't know what sleep paralysis is, that's terrifying. You might think you are actually being abducted by aliens, actually
Right.
being, attacked by a demon, or actually having a psychotic episode. And one of the people that I had interviewed for this was the author Alexandra Aaron, who has, like me, a lot of sleep issues. And like me, they were really bad during college, which I imagine is probably pretty common because you're under a lot of stress, you're not getting enough sleep, you're probably drinking way too much caffeine. And her idea about how the hallucination aspect of it works, and I think this is pretty solid, is that you can't move, and so you get that little spike of adrenaline, you get a little fear, and your brain is trying to figure out there has to be a reason I can't move, there has to be a reason I'm afraid. And you're in that, dreamy state, so your brain starts coming up with reasons why you're afraid. And because you are in that dreamy state, instead of being, like dreamy, it feels real because you are awake in many ways neurologically. You just are continuing to dream. So your brain says, oh, I'm terrified. I'd better look for a reason to be terrified. Is that
Right.
a shadow creature in the corner? Is this, this reminds me of alien abduction stories I've read. Oh, this reminds me of demon possession stories I've heard in church. And your brain starts filling in the blanks and just kind of building itself up. So that is a rational explanation for the experiences, and it's one that I ascribe to. But for people who have more religious, spiritual ideas around sleep, trance, meditation, things like that, they tend to view it more as sleep is a liminal space. Are you familiar with what a liminal space is?
Yeah.
Go ahead and explain it. I know what it is, but explain it for our listeners.
So it's like the passage between life and death, the passage of birth, the space that a shaman might occupy while, fasting or taking certain substances in order to put one foot into the next world while remaining in this one. And so from this perspective, when you are experiencing sleep paralysis, you are able to see and experience things that you wouldn't normally, that maybe those things are always there and you just can't see them. Maybe you're setting out a beacon to the universe and it comes and finds you. I'm not entirely clear on the process that people ascribe to.
Well, let me just say, I just want to say that I have a very strong impression about this very thing. And it is this, that when you're sleeping, you may not have those controls, the wall up between you and whatever else is going on out there. And that's why I think people have prophetic dreams. And although I think most sleep paralysis is exactly like the lady said that told you that about, you're trying to figure, your brain's trying to figure out what terrifies you. I think sometimes it can be something else. Joey does not, however, agree with me.
Not necessarily.
So along those lines, that makes me think of a real physical phenomenon that does occur, that we know that it occurs. We have a lot of understanding about how it occurs. So normally, human beings can only see the visual spectrum of light. That's why we call it the visible spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can see, the rainbow, all of that. But at either end of that rainbow, there are forms of light that human eyes can't see. We have ultraviolet and infrared.
Mm-hmm.
When people have a particular type of damage to their eye, so that their eye is no longer protected against those types of radiation, they are able to see other kinds of light.
That's neat.
That is wild.
Your eye is trying to protect itself, so you shouldn't see ultraviolet light, because that is a very damaging form of radiation. It's why we cover up or put on sunblock when we go out in the sun. It's your eye trying to keep itself from being cooked. But if you have this damage to it, you are able to see things beyond the visible spectrum.
Okay, my question is it because you don't actually pick up that spectrum, or is it because your brain does not process that spectrum?
Your brain
is just a part of your brain.
Your brain is able to process it once the physical damage is done to the eye, so that the light can enter it. Your brain is able to see it.
Okay.
And so similarly, this idea of sleep, parasomnias in general, mental illness for that matter, taking various substances, allowing you to see and experience paranormal entities and presences, it is a similar idea, that protective layer has been stripped away.
Yeah, I can see that.
So Carrie Drew is a blind artist. They have some vision, but faces, any kind of normal distance is just not going to be very visible. It's just going to be a blurry mess for the most part. So that is important for this, because that influences how they experience this dream, really how they react to things, what their expectations are of things that they see. And this story is several years old. It's from when they were 26. They had heard of sleep paralysis, and because they were a pagan, they had also heard of shadow people and various other things, but they had not heard of the Hat Man.
The Hat
Oh my
Man?
God.
Oh
The
my
Hat
God.
Man.
Something else to be terrified of.
He's coming for you tonight.
Stop it.
He's actually a very common sleep paralysis demon. So if you suffer sleep paralysis, he might come for you tonight. All right. So They were in a new apartment, and it was still at that stage where all of the surrounding sounds were unfamiliar. You don't know your neighbor's car sounds. The traffic is different. Maybe you're a different distance from a train than you used to be. So they're still startling awake.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also not a very good neighborhood. There had already been someone attempted to break into a neighbor's apartment. And so that's another factor in being a little on guard. And one night they awoke facing the window by their bed, and silhouetted in it through the glass was a man wearing a collared coat and a wide brimmed hat.
Inside or outside the window?
Outside the window.
Oh, God.
He had no features at all, only a void. But because Carrie's vision is legendarily bad, according to them, they didn't think that was strange. That was how they normally see faces. The strange part, the panic-inducing part, is this man is looking in their window.
Right.
And because of their vision being so bad, they've developed ways of, noticing when eye contact is made, even though they can't see faces well. So, there's little changes in, body language, in the energy of a person. And so even if they can't see a face, they feel it when eyes lock on their eyes.
That's cool.
And they felt when this man looked into their eyes. And as he was looking, he ever so casually slid out of view, ducking.
That is fucking creepy.
That is horrible.
That is
He
creepy.
just ducked right down below the window.
I would have already
my
jumped
God.
up and been screaming and high stepping it. I can't
You know,
even.
it's really like, even if you know you have sleep paralysis, that's like that's a possible scenario. Someone outside your window who does
Well,
that.
it is a possible scenario. So in the morning, they get up and they go outside to look out at their window. But they hadn't noticed before that there's a slope against the window. And so you would have to be 12 feet tall
Oh my God.
to look in that window.
It just gets better and better, doesn't it?
And so this is, now you know what sleep paralysis is,
Uh-huh.
and you have seen something inexplicable. So reasonable assumption is this was a dream hallucination.
Did
Right?
Carrie recognize that it was a dream at the time?
No, because just like with my experience with the aliens, it felt completely real.
Okay, so it was after the fact that they said, "Oh, that must have been a dream. That didn't really happen."
No, because they looked online and discovered that the Hat Man is a common experience for other people. They had not heard of the Hat Man before this.
I don't
Lots
like it.
of
I
people-
never heard of it either, and now I have.
Lots of people,
You
have
know that's how it
experienced-
spreads, right?
yeah, and he tends to just kind of like hover and just
Well, at least he's dapper. He wears the hat,
He's dapper.
Dapper demon.
Oh God.
So, and they were very clear that they did not know about him prior to this. And most people don't know about the Hat Man
Oh, yeah.
prior to seeing him.
That does make it especially creepy, though, that they don't know beforehand.
Right. And that they'd had other experiences of things sitting on their chest. It was, a naked woman with mirrors for eyes.
What?
That is
Yeah.
wild.
Which later on they found out was a being of Korean culture.
You're kidding me. That is part of a culture, that a naked woman with mirrors for eyes shows up at your house?
Think about night hags, alien abduction. I mean, that's part of our culture.
It's just that the mirrors for eyes. It brings up, what was it, Coraline? The buttons for eyes. So disturbing.
It does make me think, because there are like people who use certain drugs, and in dreams themselves, there are certain biases that people have for particular visions, or particular, they perceive some particular thing. Like, for instance, faces, there's a heavy bias for faces when people are hallucinating.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because humans have really high-powered facial recognition circuitry in their brain.
And isn't it so odd that our brains are looking for faces all the time. And then when our brain dreams up these sleep paralysis demons, there's something wrong with the faces.
Yeah.
It's
They
like
don't look
AI.
human.
You know how
Mhm.
AI screws up certain things,
Yeah.
like puts too many teeth in the mouth or the fingers are all screwed up? It's like our brains screw up these faces.
So part of that is this other stuff in the images are also screwed up. It's just that you have your brain is looks at faces and can detect differences so precisely that you see those differences more than other differences.
That makes sense.
Now, when I am dreaming normally, the thing is that I see faces very clearly. You had talked about in episode 5, the one on parasomnias, about difficulty with looking in mirrors and reading and things like that during dreams. But I don't have those difficulties. I can read and write in a dream.
Really?
I see faces clearly enough that later on I can recognize, quite often they're actors, that I cast my dreams with people whose faces I know. And so it could be, this dream is about some random, hot dog man or whatever. And I look it up later and it was actually, some actor I saw in a movie once.
That's interesting.
So
I see faces in my dreams very clearly, and they're perfectly normal faces, but they're not people I recognize.
So it's weird to me that when I am actually dreaming, I am able to see things so clearly. And when I have sleep paralysis, I see things very, very clearly, except the faces. And that is such a common thing.
That is interesting.
So there's a broad spectrum of experiences for people with sleep paralysis. Not everyone has experiences as dramatic as the ones that I have just related. A lot of them, it's just you can't move, and then you feel something like you're sleeping on your side, you can't move, and then there's someone putting their arm around you. That's a really common one. And
I read those. Mm-hmm.
The one you read where it was creepy, it was like a skeletal creature wrapping its arms around them.
Cuddled up to him.
Yeah. The interesting thing is all of the ones that I found where someone was on their side were not scary.
Well, generally when people curl up to you, you're on your side, it is a more comforting thing. But if somebody sits on your chest or pushes on your chest, that's totally different experience.
And also, if there is an aspect of oxygen deprivation, because it does tend to overlap with sleep apnea. And I think that's why when I'm on my back, that's when I tend to have it. You're able to breathe a little easier on your side. And so you're not going to feel pressure on your chest. You're not going to feel, that little spike of adrenaline of your body trying to wake itself up.
Right.
And so they would have dreams about, they have a sleep paralysis angel, some celebrity boyfriend, things like that. And they can't move, but it's not scary. It's just like, this is happening. And there are some where people are on their back and don't have a super scary one, but the ones where it was really terrifying all generally seemed to be you have something else going on. You are either on your back and maybe you have sleep apnea, you are laying on your back and you have your legs crossed so that you are, cutting off circulation, limiting that. You have insomnia. You drink a lot of caffeine to stay up during the day because you're a college student and stuff like that. The more peacefully sleeping you are, the more peaceful the sleep paralysis seems to be. That's not universal. I wouldn't say that is like some hard rule. I don't know that there is any such thing as a hard rule when it comes to sleep.
That does sound, it matches that people who had emotional disorders or psychological disorders or were substance abusers or drank too much alcohol or whatever those things were, seem to report more of them and have more scary ones, because probably there's a lot more that goes into being in that demographic than just your regular run-of-the-mill person who doesn't have any of those issues going on and just feels like they can't move in the middle of the night.
Right. All right. So one of the things that I asked people when I was interviewing them on Twitter was, did the experience change after you found out about sleep paralysis?
So,
And
like, wait a minute. So did the experience change? Like before you knew that it was sleep paralysis, it was more terrifying. And then after you found out it was not as scary, that sort of thing?
well, I left it kind of open-ended. I wanted to know what changes there were. Any changes?
Okay.
Did the content change? Did the frequency change? Did the amount of terror change?
Hmm.
And I got some interesting responses. In most cases, it did change. For those where there was a religious element to it, it changed in relation to their religious beliefs and not finding out about sleep paralysis. So one person, they were joining a pagan path, and they said that they felt that it was the gods communicating with them, and once they had integrated this pagan path into their life, it stopped because the gods no longer had to communicate with them that way.
Oh,
One person, I think she said that she was actually in the process of converting to Catholicism when she had it, and so she thought that it was demonic. And she is no longer Catholic and knows about sleep paralysis, so does not view it as demonic any longer.
interesting.
For me, I actually knew what sleep paralysis was before I had the dramatic experience. I had the mild experiences as a child, but you know, the world is inexplicable when you're a child. You just kind of expect things to be confusing and strange.
Yeah.
So for Alexandra Aaron, and I think her story is so fascinating because for her, sleep paralysis was life altering because she did not know what it was. She's my age, so at the time when she was in college, it would have been early 2000s.
Okay.
So the internet wasn't what it is now. And also, particularly the descriptions of sleep paralysis back then, if you are reading them from the perspective of, a textbook on parasomnias, for example, it was an incredibly anodyne description. It was, some people may experience a presence in the room and be unable to move. It did not go into how it feels like a real experience. I encountered it through, these alien abduction stories, so I knew how realistic it was that it made people feel like they were being abducted by aliens or fairies or demons. So I had that benefit and she did not. So she read these descriptions and she did not see that as what she was experiencing. She was torn between, am I, suffering some catastrophic mental illness, or are demons real and they're after me? Because the information out there was not good enough for her to be able to say, yes, that is what I'm experiencing, because her bed would shake. It was just really dramatic and just completely terrifying and completely real as the skittering through the house as the alien crept closer and closer to me, as real as the Hat Man peering at you through the window before ducking out of view.
That's just, I'm gonna have a nightmare about that one. That's just horrible.
It in the moment, it is real. And so if you do not know what it is, but you are inclined to consider mental health, what are you going to be directed towards? You're going to be directed towards things like schizophrenia. You're going to
also, because the way memories are recorded in our brains, there's a particular flavor to parasomnias that I believe that most people would say that it's recorded in their brain like a real experience.
Yes.
A dream is something different. A dream is some different feel to it. But when you have a sleepwalking episode or a night terror or a sleep paralysis episode, most people, they report that it's, or at least the ones I read about and my own experience with sleep terrors, night terrors, it feels like it really happened.
Yes, and you can see why, if you are inclined to have a spiritual or paranormal explanation of that you would view it as you have stepped beyond the veil, that
Right.
you are experiencing something that is completely real but not of this world. It would make sense.
Right.
And also, from another perspective, if you are not so spiritually inclined, there's also the comfort of, would you rather be special and plagued by demons, or ordinary and crazy? You know, if you do not know that it is a parasomnia, if you do not know that this is just a neurological thing that happens, it could be more comforting to think that there are demons than that you have no connection to reality.
Yeah, because there's stigma attached to mental illness. And if you think those are your only choices, yeah.
Right. And so Alexandra was, you know, she had other issues going on with her sleep because, again, chronic insomnia, you know, in college, stressed out. She described it as a nervous breakdown. It was a life-altering experience. It was terrible. And she was able to go to a therapy program, but because she was afraid of being, you know, diagnosed as, you know, schizophrenic or something like that, or demons being real, she didn't talk about that aspect of it, which I think is fair, because unfortunately there are a lot of therapists who don't actually know much about neurology.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know, I know when I was going to a therapist and I would try to talk about how my chronic illnesses affect my neurology, she tried to interpret everything as, no, that's trauma. You know, I quite often struggle to recognize faces, weirdly, while I'm awake, not while I'm asleep. And no, that's trauma. That's not.
No, that's not trauma. That's probably you, because facial blindness also is inherited. So you probably have facial blindness to a certain degree. So I do want to say that although I think there's a time and a place for therapy, I think that you have to keep in mind that all therapists, like all people, have their own biases and specialties and things that go on in their own minds. And so you have to also use your own judgment with whatever they say.
Right. And so Alexandra did not explore her sleep paralysis in therapy. She explored other things, and it, you know, she was not able to find out what the issue was at that point, and so therefore was not able to deal with it. This was a life-altering problem that I think she dropped out of college, if I understand the story correctly.
How often was this happening?
I'm not sure how often, but it was, yes, she did drop out. It was
frequent enough that it was interrupting or interfering with her having a normal life.
Yes, and she also had, you know, insomnia, and it was just really difficult.
Gosh, poor thing.
Yeah. And so, you know, she really, whenever the topic comes up or she has any excuse at all, she tries to talk about it, because this was so life-altering, and it was so terrifying, not just the content of the sleep paralysis dreams, but also, you know, the way that it made her doubt her own mind and her own reality. And she wrapped up the interview by saying, "The main thing I would want to convey to anyone who's experiencing terrifying, inexplicable things at night and who can't convince themselves it might be a sleep disorder, not real monsters, is, yes, it feels real, so real, because it is in your head."
Mm-hmm. It is.
And so I would not want to argue anyone out of their religious beliefs that surround their experiences, but for everyone else for whom it is terrifying and unwanted and does not fit with the world that they want to live in, you should consider maybe it's just your brain. And it's not that your brain is broken. It's just a thing that brains do.
It's a really normal thing. Yeah, it really is. And I think that's probably one of the most disturbing things about it, is that it's so normal.
It is so normal. If I fall asleep on my back, it happens.
Yeah.
And so I have to sleep on my side, even though I don't like sleeping on my side. If I fall asleep on my back,
So let me ask you this, Rook. Is there ever a time when you think that, or have you heard a story that you think is really probably something paranormal that's occurring during sleep paralysis?
I do not personally believe that, but I would not argue with someone if that was their firmly held belief. Like the Hat Man, that one is going to stick with me, and I am going to ponder that.
It's too bad Carrie didn't have somebody else come and look at the base of their window, because maybe there was some evidence, because obviously they could not see clearly enough to be able to look for telltale marks that someone had actually been there. Because it could be that there was some disturbance there. Not necessarily, and I'm not saying this was a paranormal experience, or that a person really did look in their window. But, that's part of your information gathering, would be to look and see, are there footprints? Is there scuff marks, like somebody leaned a ladder up here? You know what I mean?
Sure, but then how does that explain everyone else who has seen the Hat Man?
I don't freaking know. You know what? I don't want to see the Hat Man. So I'm sending the energy out to the Hat Man in the universe. Do not come to visit me. So we have weirdest stuff happen in this house, and it has happened more since we've been doing this podcast.
Well, see, so that is the other aspect to the idea that sleep paralysis could tap you into something else, or for that matter, sending any energy in the direction of the Hat Man, even if the energy is no, is that you're saying someone's voice. If someone says you're saying someone's name. If someone says your name, don't you look?
Okay, so oh, creepy.
You're never gonna let me on again.
No. So the Bloody Mary, the mirror one? Episode. I don't know if you've listened to that one. If the kids game where you look in the mirror and you're supposed to say Bloody Mary, and then I don't know, Bloody Mary's supposed to appear I've never done it because I don't like looking in mirrors. So have you ever looked in a mirror at night and whispered your own name?
No.
Why would someone do that?
Just do it.
Why would they do that?
Just do it. Because it doesn't matter if you're saying Bloody Mary or your own name. It's terrifying.
Oh, I see. You have to have the lights off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just enough light to be able to see your own glittering eyeballs.
Oh, God. Well, see, now you're getting into like scrying territory and
things.
That whole
like
you are
all about
scrying.
Yeah. Yeah, I told Jackie about it, and then she listened to it, and she told me that in fact it is true. My mother did give the crystal ball back to the lady at Mother Goose. Okay. Yeah. So Joy was concerned about my mother having kept it. Oh dear. So Rook, do you think there are paranormal things?
No. I think that there are natural things that we do not understand yet, but I do not believe that there's anything outside of nature. I think that there are normal things that have not been explained yet, but I do not believe that there are things that exist beyond nature.
Well, see, that's where we're going to have to differ, because you have to first define nature. And I think that there's a lot more to it than we know.
Yes, there is. So I am open to
we
some
don't
things.
Understand. It's like the little kid that, when I was little, and I did get sleep paralysis when I was a kid, usually when I was sick. So I had to have a fever, and I'd wake up and my mouth would be really dry, and I'd be trying to call my mom, and I couldn't open my mouth. I couldn't open my eyes. It was really, really scary for me, which is probably one of the reasons why waking up during surgery was so terrifying, because I'd had those experiences before.
Mm-hmm.
But as a little kid, I didn't know about sleep paralysis. Had no idea. All I knew is I can't move. I'm trying to call my mom and I can't call her. I think we're like those little children in the world, in the universe, in existence, and we just don't even know. And we think we know. A little kid thinks they know. Little kid thinks that Santa Claus is coming. Poor thing. and you, unless you know, or until you know, you're just faking it. You're just pretending, or you think you know, and you really are confused. So I do believe in paranormal things.
Do you believe in the Hat Man?
Yeah.
Damn you.
That was an expert move.
I am not going to talk to you about that. I'm going to have to Google it. You're going to have to.
And then
my brain will be infected with it.
So I think that if you are seeing something and so your brain is interpreting as a face because you have a heavy bias for faces, but there's something off about the contour of the top of the face. Your brain may have a bias for inserting a hat. That's what I mean. Otherwise, maybe a bowl cut, but probably not, you know?
That there could be a cognitive explanation for why this is a common hallucination.
Exactly. And so anything that is feeding into the hallucination the dream hallucination, that it is a face, but then also correcting so that it makes sense for the contour you're actually seeing. You know, if I look at a wood grain, it might look like a dog's face, but it's slightly skewed. And so there's a reason why it looks slightly skewed. And it's because the dog is like a mangy dog or something.
Right. But yeah, if your brain is insisting on treating this, what is it? Pareidolia?
Pareidolia.
Where you see faces?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think there's another term, but pareidolia I think is the one with seeing patterns in random noise.
Okay. If your brain is insisting that this shadow, this pattern, whatever, is a face, but you are awake enough that you can tell it's not a face, then you're getting a kind of a double vision of your brain trying to make it a face, and your brain also telling you it's not a face. And so then you see something horrifying or weird.
Yeah.
Right.
Because like if I see there's a wood grain, because we have old wood paneling in my office, if I see some wood grain and it looks like a face, well, yeah, I can say that looks like a face. But if I saw that walking around, that's not a face.
Yeah.
That's not a human face. What the hell is that?
So, and then if you're already in a state where your brain is generating images, and it can be convinced of things that are definitely impossible or not true. Even if you're completely rational, your brain is in a state where it is doing unusual things inherently. That would be my rationalization of why that would be possible.
Kind of a self-induced uncanny valley.
Exactly, yeah. But however, if you have any doubt in your mind about the process we just talked about, you might, if you saw something that looked like a face, not be able to convince yourself that it's just something your brain is doing.
I also want to point out there's a real danger with, like the Hat Man thing, or what was that? Slender Man. So someone has this experience and they tell somebody else, and then because it's in their mind, then that's what they're going to see when their brain tries to make sense of the nonsensical shape or pattern. And then it just kind of grows from there until it becomes a phenomenon. And that would be the concern with anything that you start talking about. People saying there's a demon sitting on my chest. And now people who are having sleep paralysis identify with the feeling of heaviness on their chest as being a demon sitting on their chest.
Sure. But then you could also, if you're coming at it from a paranormal perspective, say that we strengthen things by having a shared reality, of having a shared idea of them. That why do you worship gods? That they are fed and strengthened by your acts of faith and your belief. And so couldn't that same thing apply to demons and ghosts and other things? Of the more people think about them, the larger number of people who think about them, the stronger they are.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because that's really disturbing.
Yeah, and that explains why the Hat Man wants you to fear it, because then you'll talk about it and continue to spread it.
Right. Okay. It's like rabies being transmitted through saliva, and so you lose the ability to swallow.
Yeah.
It's astral rabies.
Yeah, it is. It's astral rabies. Rook, do you have anything else you want to tell us? We have about 6 minutes left on this recording.
If you do have sleep paralysis, one of the easiest ways, it's not always easy, to wake yourself up is to start with the small muscles. So wiggling fingers and toes and focusing on that and slowly working your way up to releasing your entire body, that works a lot better than the panic of trying to scream and trying to jerk your whole body.
Yeah.
So if you're having an inexplicable experience, try wiggling your fingers and toes.
I've also heard your tongue and your lips.
Yeah, what quite often happens is that before I'm able to wiggle myself awake, I start making noise, and that wakes up my husband, and he reaches over and shakes me. And that ends it.
The very few times I've had sleep paralysis, the one thing that every single time has had in common with every other time is it feels like my lips are glued together so that I can't open my mouth.
And my jaw is stuck together, but not my lips. Ugh.
Yeah.
Oh God.
I'm familiar with that.
That's terrifying.
You've heard it.
I've had that.
Oh, you've had it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so creepy. Okay.
Okay.
Will you do this again with us?
Absolutely. This was fun once we worked out the kinks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love creeping you guys out.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Rook, for coming and talking with us and freaking me out. And if I have a horrible experience in the middle of the night, I'll be sure and call you on the phone. So
thank you. Please do.
If any of you have had any experiences that you would like to share with us, feel free to contact us. We'd love to hear them. We always love to hear from everybody. Please share, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and never be so terrified you can't run.